Now recognizes Mr. Allred.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary, good to see you again. Thank you for being here. I want to thank you for being what I consider to be an incredible partner to the passage and now implementation of the historic investments included in the bipartisan infrastructure law. Your leadership has been vital in ensuring that we're able to get funding out into our communities and to finally take action to repair our nation's crumbling infrastructure. One project of many that I could pick from that I'd like to highlight is the Federal Transit Administration's recent award to the Dallas Area Rapid Transit System, or DART, in my district. This $103 million grant will allow DART to modernize its bus fleet, replacing 186 of its oldest buses with new low-emission buses. That's a big deal for our community. These kinds of investments were made possible by the IIJA and are helping DART and other transit agencies in our communities modernize and upgrade their services to keep our cities healthier and thriving for generations to come. And I want to thank you and your agency for working with Congress to implement the funding for this historic investment. And I want to discuss a project that I think has great economic and connectivity benefits for my state, high-speed rail, particularly the project connecting Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston. I was glad to hear of your support earlier in this hearing, but I'd like to give you an opportunity, if you would, to expand on some of the benefits that your department believes these kinds of projects can bring to the country.
Well, thanks for the question, and let me echo our congratulations to DART and your district on successfully competing for and winning that grant. I know you're a strong advocate for those funds to be put to use there. When it comes to high-speed rail, we see benefits in terms of economic development, in terms of safety, in terms of emissions, and I think that there are many geographies around the U.S. that are especially suited to this. And again, I'm going to have the caveat that I'm not commenting on any ongoing application process. But when you consider how Texas has population centers in major global cities not that far away from each other, you can see how there's a compelling use case for passenger rail in general and high-speed rail in particular. And I've had an opportunity to speak with and meet some of the people involved in the technologies that would be put to use in that proposal, and think, as I believe in high-speed rail generally, certainly believe in the Texas case, that for many Americans, seeing would be believing, and experiencing that value being created on American soil would create that much more appetite to further develop a genuine national high-speed rail in the future.
Yeah, I agree, and I just want to point out for folks that this line would connect the 4th largest metro area in the country in DFW with the 5th largest metro area in the Houston metro, two areas that account for about half of the population of the state of Texas and about half the economic output of the state of Texas, and that are predicted to grow by nearly 50% by 2045. So we have to provide more options for getting around, but it would also be reliable, safer, faster in most cases, and as you mentioned, environmentally friendly. And I think that the time for investments in these kinds of projects is now. And if you recall, House Democrats in 2021 provided $10 billion in funding for high-speed rail projects. I just wonder, how can we work with your department to ensure that we're providing sufficient levels of funding for these projects as we continue to implement the IIJA?
Well, the IIJA provided, especially through the Fed-State partnership, the means to introduce high-speed rail or accelerate it in places where we don't have it. It did not, though, honestly, contain enough funding for a full national high-speed rail network. There's a lot of work we have to do just to take care of what we've got in our nationwide freight and passenger rail network. But I believe that there are the means within IIJA to fund more than one high-speed rail project with this authorization in the 5-year life of this bill. And I think that the success of those projects will be an important part of how future potential investments could be justified.
Yeah. Well, in the time I have left, as you know, I have American Airlines and Southwest Airlines headquartered in my area, and I just have to note how critical it is that we continue to make progress addressing the shortage of air traffic controllers. I want to thank you for your work in that regard and your department's work in that regard, and just stress how critically important it is that we get the FAA reauthorization across the finish line and avoid what I think would be a disastrous shutdown. That's not a question for you, sir. That's just something I want to put on the record and say for my area and for our economic output, for the thousands of jobs that are relying on it, it's critically important. So thank you for being here. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Allred. The chair now recognizes